Hi, everybody. This is Paul again with another episode of PropStream Pro Series. I find myself today with Josh Craig, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at Lima One. He is with us today, and he's going to discuss what he has to offer for all of our incredible users and all of our incredible investors that use PropStream. And without further ado, Josh Craig. Hi, Josh.
Hey, Paul. Great to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Great to meet you, man. Thank you. Thanks for coming on. We wanted to have you on our show to really have a conversation with you because your company, Lima One, they offer something that investors really need. It's a critical part, critical portion of the business. So maybe you could kind of explain what it is you do and what it is your company does.
Sure, happy to. So Lima One Capital is probably one of the top 5 private lenders in the country in the space. Been around since 2011. Really tailor ourselves to a full end-to-end product suite for investors, whether that's fix and flip loans, new construction, bridge loans, rental property loans for small, first-time landlords to large institutional funds, as well as multifamily, stabilized and value-add properties. So really the full suite of products under one roof. Your customers obviously looking at flipping properties, renting properties, and everything in between. And it's we strive ourselves to have that full suite of products ready.
Great. And so let's kind of walk it through from the perspective of, let's say, a rehab or somebody that might have gotten into the business recently and they're in need to get some sort of financing. They have found a property for rehab, and they don't necessarily have all the money for that project or to take down that property. What does that person do, and how do they work with you?
Sure. So very common. Typically, under normal times, right, you're going to have loan programs for rehab and fix and flip investors where we'll advance up to 90% of proceeds to purchase that property, and then depending on the scope of work for the rehab, take a portion of that budget and put it aside into an escrow account, depending on the scope of work, depending on the overall project details, and then we advance funds for that project as work is completed. Very common across industry. You go and complete $10,000 worth of work. We send an inspector out to go verify work completed. We then advance funds that you've already put into that property. Typically, again, under normal times, we're far from normal times right now, but typically we're going to advance 90% of proceeds on the purchase, up to 75% of our prepared value of that property.
Gotcha. And what does it generally cost somebody to be able to get funds from you? What does that break down and look like?
Yeah, good question. So, the private lending space really looks at a few main criteria when determining leverage, when determining price, when determining structure of the loan. The biggest driver of that is going to be experience. So although we have loans for first-time investors, and many private lenders do, typically those are going to be a little more expensive because of the risk nature of the customer. Not having experience is just one of those factors where this is definitely a space. The more you do, the more you learn, and the more proficient you become at it, and on executing on time, on budget. So without a ton of experience, you're typically going to pay in that 10, 11+% range from an interest rate. But more experienced investors can get all the way down typically into the 6s or 7s. And again, that's kind of pre-COVID terms, but we won't be surprised if those things tick north here as we work through this. But those are ballpark terms, anywhere from that 7 to 11%.
Right. And what kind of, in that history, right? So you go from being a newer investor, maybe you get a 10 to 11% rate. What does someone have to do, or how do they prove themselves to get to that point to have a rate in that 6-7 range? What's that evolution have to look like?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a good question. So typically we're going to look back over a 2-year, maybe 3-year horizon to look at projects successfully completed and exited. It's one thing just to complete a property. Maybe you took a loss in your first deal, but maybe you learned a lot of good lessons. So we really take a look at that the whole spectrum of the investor's background to say, how many properties did you exit or did you buy and you currently rent that you maybe did a lot of rehab to? So how many properties did you exit? How many have you bought? How many do you have under management? And we also look at assets. I didn't mention credit or assets, but those are the other kind of 3 big things we look at: experience first and foremost, assets of the guarantors, and credit. So even though we don't, it's not a personal, owner occupied loan, the credit profile of that customer still comes into play. And we still want to make sure we have, credit trustworthy borrowers who can repay loans and have a background doing so.
And I'm assuming the credit also will kind of determine where that rate might land, right? So somebody with a 500 credit score, even though maybe they have a history of 10 completed projects, would that still offset that rate a bit, or how does that work with that personal credit?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, I mentioned experience being obviously the biggest driver of that, but credit and assets right behind that in determining what the overall rate structure looks like.
All right. So you mentioned before that 6.7, which that's a good rate. You mentioned that might change, and I'm only guessing that has to do with our current climate, right? Current pandemic, the COVID-19 that we're going through. What do you see? What have you seen this last 2 months in your business that's changed, maybe slow down, or has been affected, or maybe not at all? I mean, what can you see there?
Yeah, no, to say it hasn't been affected would be definitely inaccurate. I mean, the world is dramatically changed over the past 60 days. We went from the complete end-to-end product suite, like I mentioned, basically almost immediately with the slowdown. Rental property financing came off the market, nationwide. Finding private money for rental properties is very few and far between. There's some different smaller lenders out there still have some funds, but by and large, rental property financing has gone away. Will it come back? Absolutely. It's still a tremendous asset class that has long-term value and has a perfect place in our industry. It's mere hiatus for the time being. So we've for the time being that's off the market. And our leverage, which was once 90%, like I mentioned, and 75 of after repaired value, is now at 65. Right. So went from 20-25% haircut overnight. Merely because of the availability of capital, the appetite for risk, the uncertainty with what's to come. All of those things just come into play, and all lenders are just being prudent to make sure we know exactly what it's going to look like on the other side before we can go back to kind of the more normalized terms that we're all used to.
Right, a lot of factors that go into play there to really kind of assess where you guys need to be to continue, in business and really mitigate any risk that you might be experiencing now. Well, Josh, I think a question that I commonly see in communities of investors or rehabbers might be the discussion of what's the difference of private money and hard money, right? Because these are two terms that are kind of thrown out there when people are looking for money, right? So I wondered if you can maybe draw a distinction there between those two.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's an actual textbook definition for either. I think you're right. The blend is certainly there. I think just the roots of this private lending space has been in hard money. It's always been private. I think the two are fairly interchangeable. We certainly, as a kind of private lending industry, have gotten away from calling it hard money just because of the bad connotation from it. It's not. There's absolutely no price gouging. There's no. I think it just has a feeling of it's 15% and 5 points type hard money. That's not where we are. Once upon a time, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it's where the space was. But this idea of private money, I'm guessing it's more of the kind of institutional backing that's came in the past 10 years is where this nomenclature change, now calling it private money because of this more private nature of the large institutional capital behind us. Has just kind of evolved us out of that hard money name into more private.
Right. No, I mean that's good. It's a little slight change in how it's referred to, but I think it's still circulated amongst the circles of investors out there. So I think making that not the distinction, but making it clear that it is the same, but it's kind of evolved over the years, right? Where hard money maybe had a different feeling or a different understanding of what it really meant, right? I know Lima One, you guys are a national company, right? I believe years back we used you when I was dealing with a house in Florida. How does somebody reach out to you guys, and what's that beginning process to either get qualified or really just to see what they would qualify for that particular project?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So we have many different ways. Our website, first and foremost, is a great just source of information of the high level of what we do and who we are. But in terms of getting directly in contact, there's a contact me form right on that website, limaone.com. Our 800 number is on there as well. We have inside sales, about 20 inside sales reps, standing by phones kind of at all the time, ready to help
And you're in
customers.
all states, right? All 50 states. Is there any limitations anywhere?
44 states, I think, at this point. A couple of the smaller states where not a lot of investment activity typically happens, but a few states where your customers are, we're going to be there as well.
Right. So let me ask you a question. Why would somebody need this money? Like paint the picture to us, right? Where somebody, why should they consider getting, private money as opposed to maybe using their money, right? That's the question I hear often. Yes, I have money in the bank. Should we use this money, or should we get private money for these deals? What would you say to those that are kind of contemplating on whether they should dig into their pocket or maybe partner up with you guys for that next project?
Yeah, I mean, really two main reasons, right? The power of leverage, OPM, other people's money, right? It's that compound effect of taking that. If you have 100 grand in the bank, you can buy $100,000 property, good on you, or you can buy 3 or 4 $100,000 properties and use the power of leverage to amplify that growth.
Other people's money, right? Don't we love that? Really leveraging other people's money. And that's really the beautiful thing about real estate, right? And I think for our viewers that are watching this that are newer, really the power of being able to get into property, whether it's single family or commercial, to be able to get into property without your own money. And I think that's a mental block for a lot of people out there, right? You think real estate when you're starting out in the business, you're like, oh wow, I need millions to be able to get in and start. But that couldn't be any further from the truth because of companies like yourself that are out there that allow you, obviously based on qualification, to get the resources and the funding they need so that they can go and start those projects or start their first project or whatever it may be.
And also
Josh,
just minimize your risk, right? I mean, being all in on one property with all of your money is a risky proposition. So the ability to diversify your risk, use that power of leverage, and have additional properties on the go, and diversifying that risk has to be in the factor in the calculation as well.
Right. Josh, is there anything else that maybe a newer investor, because I know our seasoned investors out there listening to this, they may have worked with you guys before in the past, or they're very familiar with reaching out to private lending institutions. But for our newer investors, investors that maybe haven't ever gotten private money, what things should they be aware of when reaching out to like a company like yours or anybody else out there that they're trying to get private funding from?
Yeah, that's a great question too. Maybe a few things. I mean, even though we're not a bank, right, we still have requirements. Right? We still take a deep dive into understanding our customer base, understanding their project plan, understanding their goals and their scope. So definitely come with your plan. Understand that we're going to want to take a look at your assets. We want to know you. So one of the good things about, we're big for our space, but we're really still small in the scheme of things. So we really, truly want to understand our clients and how to help them. And our partnership with PropStream goes a long way to document that, of how do we help our clients not just find debt, but how do we help them find properties? How do we help them find this ecosystem? So we're very much a culture-driven company, and not just internally with our people, but how do we treat our clients, and how do we help them interact with our other clients and cross-sell to each other and tap into this entire kind of ecosystem. You hear a lot of investors and proven guys talk about it's the team, right? That you need to have your accountant, your title guy, your insurance guy, your lender, your wholesaler. You need to find this ecosystem. So when we meet new clients coming in, we really want to understand that. How do they expect to find properties? How do they expect to exit those properties? Who are they going to use it to handle project management? So definitely come with either questions about how we can help you identify that team, or with your plan so we can really help dive into it. And even though maybe you're an inexperienced customer, maybe we can help you out with different ways, in whether it's a rate or leverage or access to capital that you might not have otherwise if you didn't come with a plan. So I would just encourage everyone to kind of take that to heart.
That's some good advice there. I mean, guys, you heard it straight from the chief revenue officer's mouth over here at Lima One. And, you know, if you guys are looking for funding for your next project, or really generally just have questions about maybe getting qualified or anything along those lines, you know, reach out to Josh and his team. Josh, you gave your website before, but is there a direct a way that folks can get a hold of you to maybe ask you some questions, or really start getting the process rolling?
Absolutely, yeah. So you can email me directly, jcraig@limaone.com. You can also call, you know, I'll give our sales number, rings right to our sales team. It's 800-390-4212. Call that number, rings right to our sales team. Happy to answer any questions you have and help you get started.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thanks a lot for spending some time with us. And for everybody out there, this was another episode of our PropStream Pro series. Please check out PropStream.com for all your PropStream and real estate investor data. Go check it out, guys, and make sure you check out Lima One. Go hit up this guy, Josh. Josh, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for the information. It's definitely helpful to our sea of users and our customers out there, and I very much appreciate you. Please stay healthy out there, and thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Great meeting you, Paul.
Thank you, Josh.